have 0 people waiting.
Want to do the pledge or a prayer?
Do the pledge.
Okay.
Pray. I'm shocked that nobody's logging on and waiting on YouTube. And yeah, you're all good. This thing going.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight at our Planning Commission meeting. Let's start with a pledge and a prayer. Yeah, Rich will give us our pledge and...
Stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jesse will give the prayer.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to come before thee tonight as a community, and we're grateful for the fortunate circumstances that we find ourselves. We pray that as we meet to discuss these agenda items, that we can have a spirit of harmony one with another, and that we can find a resolution that is the best for the city as a whole. We are grateful for the many blessings that we have, and we recognize how blessed we are, and we pray for these things earnestly this evening in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to give a little shout out to, if y'all heard there was a, do you care if I tell everyone?
No.
If you've heard, there was a bill that went across that did get approved at the government level that had people paying higher interest and higher fees if you had higher credit, good credit. Well, the realtors just shut that down. So that's gone just yesterday. Good news for homeowners. Okay. The consent agenda, the items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission may ask that any items be considered individually for the purposes of commission discussion and or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Rich Lewis, I recommend approval. I move to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second. Jesse?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Can I just give a caveat on item number 2 for the small piano lesson? Ironically, my wife and I were just talking about this and how we want to maintain a relationship with our 10-year-old while still teaching her piano. We're like, we need a third party.
Let me know how that works.
Yeah. My wife's like, I cannot teach our kids if we're going to have any kind of relationship of piano.
Yeah. So you're Lauren. That's awesome. Good job.
You're done.
You're done.
We'll be
Good.
in touch. We'll reach out to you.
You need my money, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank
Yeah.
you. Good luck. Okay, well, let's move on to item number 3. First, let me just say thanks for coming tonight, all of you. As you know, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item on April 13th. I was the only commissioner that was not in attendance that meeting. I was out of town. I have reviewed the minutes and the meeting recording as well as the written comments that have been submitted. If you spoke at the public hearing or have submitted comments to Sean, there's no need to repeat those comments tonight. Try to refrain. If you did not get the opportunity to speak at the last meeting, or you have new information that you want to talk to us about, we're happy to take your comments. We'd first like to hear from the applicant if there's anything new that you'd like us to know, Ralph, and then we'll open it up to the public. Please remember, we are just a recommending body that the City Council will make the final decision. So thanks. Okay, Ralph, you're up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I won't go into as much history as I did last time, just really quick. I'll just tell you, you've got my map that I sent, and it shows that I'm right in the middle of the subdivisions. Of course, the first one was developed by Dwayne Jensen 53 years ago for the Westwood subdivision. I then bought 35 years ago property south east of that subdivision, and then later Merrill Gatmeyer bought others and bought the area where his subdivision is, And what amounts to now, there's the 4 subdivisions around me. As property owners all the way through, clear back to 53 years ago, there was 2 questions that were asked when people went to develop property by the property owners around. One, do they have the property rights to develop? Are they intact? Yes. Is it within the city ordinances? Yes. So we didn't have any problem. All those subdivisions are now around me. And so now here I am, and I came into Sean and I asked him, I want to develop, I want to turn in an application. He asked me, have you still got your property rights? Yes, because I'm not in the subdivision. He agreed. And then, well, and the other one was, does it follow the city ordinances? How are you going to develop it under the TDR ordinance? Are you in a receiving zone? Yes. And do you have a TDR? And of course, yes. So now, as I go to develop, you guys saw the letters. You had the letters from opposition. You saw my letter. After I turned in the application to Sean, I went around and talked to all the neighbors. I did not have one neighbor that had a problem with me building a house on my lot. The problem they had was, what's it going to do to subdivision? It's going to set a precedence. And sorry, in your letter I put president instead of precedence, but grammar error. But anyway, and you can see in the letters, but their worry was to maintain the integrity of all the subdivisions combined, which there's 80 acres in those combined subdivisions. It's a 1/4 mile from the dot that I had on mine each way, east-west, 990 feet each way. So I'm literally in an island and surrounded by others. Perfect spot for TDR. There isn't a better spot to hide a TDR in the city. And it's not going to do one thing. You read in the ordinance, there's no way it can affect the rights and the ordinances set for the subdivision. It's completely compliant. The same questions that were asked were, if I have the property rights, is it within the ordinances? It is. And so that's where I'm at. Appreciate it, and I'll let anybody else speak, and then if I can, if there's any questions to answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's open it up to the public.
My name is Lynette Cornaby. Chad Cornaby is my husband, and we live west of Rolfe on 2400, down by the highway. I am grateful for this process. We've been here a few times, and I'm grateful for your careful consideration of each issue. I like my neighbors. I love where I live. We've had some contention in our neighborhood. We don't like change. But I have a few reasons why I did not sign the letter opposing Ralph and Tangi splitting their lot, and I'd like to share them. First, I can't base my decisions on future unknowns. The fear that having smaller lots on our street will set a precedent for future dense housing has been mentioned. Let's see. But that could be true. That's a possibility, but I can't base my decision on something that may or may not happen. One more house on my street, one more family in the neighborhood is not going to change my way of life. And I trust that we as a neighborhood can band together as we have in the past to fight any future developments that we don't like that may come up, and we can do it at that time. Second, I trust that God has a plan. We've heard over and over from our stake president, Kellen Mills, and others that God is bringing people to Mapleton who need to be here. People who need our influence and people whose influence we might need. I'm sure most of us have prayed a time or two about this issue, and I trust that God has heard our prayers and will continue to take care of us. Lastly, I believe people are more important. Several years ago, my husband and I found ourselves in a similar situation as the Walpoles are in right now. We had neighbors who didn't like the way we were using our property, and they made us feel unwelcome, and we nearly uprooted our family and our business and moved to North Dakota to start over. And I don't want to make Rolf and Tangi feel unwelcome in their own neighborhood. Fortunately, in our case, my husband and I found a different solution that satisfied our neighbors and benefited our family, and we didn't leave. Since then, we've even had a pretty good relationship with those neighbors. So no matter what decision is made tonight, I feel that people are more important. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Casey Beck. I live at 1225 West, 2400 South, which is just one property to the west of the Walpoles. Last meeting, there was some mention that you wish the TDR program would just go away and that your hands are tied when it comes to TDRs and having to approve them. TDRs are, of course, not tied to any property until the city council approves an application. There exists a TDR marketplace. Anyone can go out and buy a TDR if they would like. I found out a couple days ago that a TDR today costs around $130,000. So there's definitely a marketplace that's been built with it. If your hands were tied, though, and a TDR wouldn't even come, then the TDR wouldn't even come before you or the city council. Where a TDR is to be used is a legislative action made by you and the city council that utilizes the code, the general plan, and public discussion, of course, to weigh the decision and make one that is best for the community. So if you agree with us, this is not what is best for the neighborhood, then you can certainly vote that way. The three criteria from the packet I'd like you to focus on. One, does this development follow the spirit of the law? No. Does this development maintain and protect an established neighborhood? No. Does this achieve a desirable development? Heck no. One of the questions from the previous meeting was whether our area was even a neighborhood. And I don't know what definition you want to go by for what a neighborhood is, or what collection of our 31 households can be called. But the fact that our neighborhood has come together 3 times now to fight off development in our neighborhood, I think shows clear that we're a neighborhood. We have several neighborhood parties a year. We come together to irrigate, to bonfire together, to sign petitions against development. So I've never really lived in a place like this that felt more like a neighborhood than here. The city code says that TDRs should not be used on lots that are in subdivisions. Why would this be? Well, it's probably to keep neighborhoods intact, maintain them, and protect them from development. The general plan even says to not promote island development. So I know we just talked about an island development right here, and general plan even says to not allow that. The application today is surrounded by subdivided lots, and the letter of the law is being followed, but is the spirit of the law. When you're discussing point 4, and if it's consistent with the recommendation of the general plan, your first thought might be to look at the land use map. The general plan, though, is actually 324 pages. It's 10 documents, and not just one page. It's not just that map. The Mapleton Code, section 18.12.010B states, in cases where a conflict arises between the general plan map and the general plan policies, precedence should be given to the plan policies. And what policy 2.1 says in your packet is that is to maintain and protect the established residential districts and neighborhoods. So that policy, combined with the spirit of the guideline in point 3, I believe clearly state that development should not happen in established neighborhoods, which ours is. And lastly, point 5 asks if using a TDR in our neighborhood achieves a desirable development. That part wasn't discussed last time, and I don't know how you can say that it is desirable when 90% of the households are against it and have been against it for the 3rd time in 5 years. City staff confirmed that the road would need to be widened and there would be added costs to the city. So this could also lead to further development and changing the country road designation if more development is introduced. So it's not desired by the neighborhood. and adds cost to a town that doesn't have a big budget. So I don't see how there's any way it can be called a desirable development. So please vote no or heck no. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So first off, I'm Ryan Schramm. I've lived in the city for about 27 years. I lived on a piece of property close to the Walpoles, but recently have moved. I still live in Mapleton, and I love it. I was in the meeting for the 2020 request. The request was quite a bit different than this one. They wanted to put multiple lots on those properties. From what I understand, those two properties could still use TDRs to develop to 2.5 acres. That's right within that area. As far as the island, you know, in KCU's in the spirit of the law, that's great. But when it comes down to it, we need to do what's right. It's the letter of the law that counts. And I think within that boundary, it's there. I'm looking at Cherie because I don't know if you're aware or not, but the property that you live on was a TDR. And it's something, I mean, it was developed. There's 17 lots there. There's other places in the city that has happened. As far as I can see, living in that neighborhood, as long as I did, and the traffic for one extra home to be on there, I don't think it's going to affect the traffic all that much. As far as future, there is options for those other residents that haven't, they've lived there since I've moved, actually, from that location. So I don't even know who they are, and I don't know if they have those rights, but those rights are still available to them. So other than that, I don't think there's any other rights in the neighborhood other than those specific properties. So my request is simply, you know, we vote you public officials in to uphold the law. There's ordinances in place for this particular thing. So I'm saying, you know, that this should be an easy decision for the council. I mean, I completely respect Casey and his thoughts. I understand that we want to keep it there, but there was stuff set in place 20-something years ago for these TDRs. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
I'm Eric Moss. I don't live in the neighborhood. I don't live in Mapleton. I do own property in Mapleton, though. So I intend on moving to Mapleton. I grew up here, love Mapleton, know lots of people. As I've learned about this, for me, the subject property falls within the guidelines. It's in the R1. As far as I can tell, it meets those requirements. I know that this keeps getting brought up, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law. We have to separate church and state. So it's the letter of the law. There is no spirit of the law. It's what's written. For me, I don't live in, my property's nowhere near this property, but I know the TDRs were put in place for all of Mapleton, not just one neighborhood. It was to preserve green space for all of us to enjoy, not just one neighborhood to say yes or no to. So for me, I would say there's no reason that Rolf cannot do this. So like he said, he's in an island. No one else around him can do it. But please use the TDRs, and please preserve the green space that's been set aside for all of Mapleton to use. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Anyone?
I'm kind of old, and I'm not too good at this, and I don't know laws, but I know people.
Can you state your name for the record?
Pardon?
Can you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm Grant Lanny Daybell. I've been in Mapleton 80 years. It's been a great place to live, great place to raise my children. I can't say I'm happy with the population growth because I'm from the old school. But I've known Rolf and Tangi for years, and there's more to it than just right and wrong. There's more to it than what? The law end of it. I've watched Rolf and Tangi coach baseball games, help kids grow up, make good people out of them. I watch Tangi walk by my house every day with her bad knee, trying to get it better. And the reason they're building this house is that Tangi won't have to climb up and down her stairs. So I can't see, I don't care about the law. There's right and wrong in it. They've been good people for Mapleton. They've always helped other people, and I think we should be helping Tangi into a house that will relieve the pain she's in. And that's about it.
Thank you, Lanny. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no more speakers, we will close the public hearing. Yes, Ralph, go ahead.
Just to say one last thing, point out what Casey said. Again, it says right in the TDR ordinance, the section, this is section 18.76.040B. Receiving areas shall be located exclusively within the A2 and RA1 zones. So that's where this TDR is supposed to be placed. It's completely in line with city ordinances. If people stand up and are against this TDR transfer and want me to tear it up, we need to go next door and tear up the general plan, the subdivision plans, the zoning laws, zoning ordinances, because that's what's here at stake is the TDR ordinance and the value of my TDR. And so that's, like I said, there's nothing in my request that's against any of the city ordinances. Frontage, everything, no better place to hide a TDR than right here on the property.
Thank you, Ralph. I know, right? Ralph, that was very dramatic. Okay, well, let's chat.
Let me just give you
I thought I
yeah.
closed the public hearing. Okay.
It
Yes,
just-
Sean.
Just a couple of quick thoughts again, just to
Thank you.
summarize. Rolf is correct. There's nothing in his application that violates the ordinance. Mr. Beck and some of the other people that have expressed concerns are also correct that you have the discretion to decide whether this is an appropriate location. I mean, because it's legislative, the council and the commission have broad discretion, and what you're really looking at is it consistent with the general plan and the TDR ordinance, and the other caveat is it compatible with surrounding and future development? So you're not violating the ordinance whether you approve it or deny it, but you want to consider the adopted standards as you're making your decision.
Thank you.
And last time we split the vote. To me, it is black and white. Every requirement has been checked. This should be approved, and I will vote the same this time.
My position is the same as Rich and the same as last time. It meets all the requirements for the TDR overlays, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Sean, you've got the slide this time, which is great, to help point out that last map with all the yellow.
That one.
Attachment 3, all that yellow around it could be used for TDR overlays to chop all those down to 1 acre lots and still meet city codes requirements for TDRs. So is this an island development? It is, because the subdivisions around Ralph were put in 20 plus years ago before Ralph. So I feel that it meets the code requirements and everything to accept this location for a TDR.
So just help me understand a little bit better the reason why this property wasn't included in a subdivision.
So, you know, you look at, this is the same map, it just shows which properties are subdivided. So when there would have been multiple ownerships of these properties over time, and they would have been larger pieces.
I can answer that. So what it is when you buy a piece of a parcel, rather
It's-
than buying a building lot, you buy a parcel.
Right.
Just like Colton Christensen's properties, just like the ones where they tried to subdivide before. If you buy a bigger lot than is required for, or a bigger acreage than is required for a subdivision or a lot, you don't need to apply for subdivision, sorry, I'm getting out.
Sure, but I guess I'm just wondering how this didn't get
Included in those.
clumped in, yeah.
It would have been just a remnant that they had a large enough parcel to pull a building permit for, which they would have done, and so they weren't dividing that particular piece up. The other pieces had been subdivided from it.
Okay. Okay, Jesse, TJ?
My concern, and I thought about this when I was chair, was we are always cognizant of precedents. And that's my concern. And I think that we set a precedence in the 2020 application. And so I'm trying to reconcile this. It's splitting hairs, and so you can look at one of two ways. My concern is if we go one direction, then what are the implications of that? And I see that most people see this as an isolated event, and we have the burden of trying to look at it through not just an isolated event, but what is the precedence that it sets for the entire city as we see future applications. And so let's say we were to pass this, what would happen, what could potentially happen to the 2020 applicant who said, listen, I'm in the same neighborhood, I'm trying to do the exact same thing, I'm using TDRs, and I got denied?
Yeah, so precedent is kind of contextual.
Yeah.
You know, that making a decision today doesn't bind your decision in the future. When precedent gets you in trouble is when you're presented with basically the exact same facts and you make different decisions. So if there's different scenarios, you can look at them, and you hope that each decision you're working through your rationale and you're stating it on the record. This is why we're voting the way that we are. And if you had a situation that was exactly the same and you voted differently, that could potentially lead to some issues for the city. But again, these are legislative decisions. So if you are able to say, this is why we're voting on this one, and this is why it makes it different than another one, you can take a different, your decision you're not bound by a past decision, or this decision won't bound a future decision.
Okay.
Sean, on the 2021, if I remember right, we recommend, they were applying to become an A1 designation and use TDR overlay.
Correct.
And as a body, I think we recommended that they stay A2, but have the ability to use TDRs. And then the city council decided not to do that.
Yep.
And
That 2020 decision, to me, felt like double dipping. They wanted the
Yes.
different designation and then apply a TDR overlay.
So in
So it's a
terms of
completely different
what we recommended then was the ability to use the TDRs. And so at some level, as I've thought about it more, maybe that it isn't inappropriate in this case to, even though my fear is, and people have expressed it, that it opens up the door for more 1 acre lots in the future, and it might. But as we went that direction that time, I'm kind of leaning more that way now.
Say that one more time. You're leaning towards,
To recommend that Ralph be able to use his TDR.
okay.
Can you go back to the yellow map with the not platted subdivision?
Yep.
So if we approve this one, everywhere else, these are all platted subdivisions and they won't be able to be developed, right?
Yeah, so that's what this map was meant to show, is the reverse, right? Everything in the yellow was platted and would not be using TDRs, and then everything in the yellow on this map could at least ask.
It's wrong?
I own a property right
you show us with the red dot?
I'm not sure which one Little
Can-
Fields is, but
Is there Revel?
This one up here?
this,
Okay.
Oh, this one. Oh, sorry, go back one. This one?
oh. Gotcha.
Oh, it should go straight
So
down,
Oh, this should go straight up.
or
This,
straight down?
oh, oh,
Is this one the new, is that the new, is that the new, that's the new lot? Okay,
Right,
that may
right.
be the case, so that may be just slightly off, but the context is the same.
so with the exception of that one lot for Rolf, everyone else is fairly insulated from any kind of future splitting.
And Ralph, I don't know that it really makes a difference, but which side you wanted to, did you want to do the house on? To the south or to the
He
east?
wants to split it
Actually,
east,
what
yeah.
I'm gonna do is divide my lot between
He's going up and down, right?
the house and the shop, keep the shop, build a house on the east side. Maybe an acre on my existing house, and then I'll have an acre and a half on the new lot.
Are the folks that own the house to the east here tonight?
They're not, but he's fine with it. He went, signed the petition, he's one of their good friends. He said, there's no way I would go against you on it.
So that map shows there's only a sliver within there where there's a couple slivers where they wouldn't be in potential conflict, or where they wouldn't potentially come in contact with 1 acre homes in future developments. So most every house could potentially be in contact with 1 acre house, so Ralph's really wouldn't be that out of place if that's how development goes in the future.
So the property to the east of Ralph's neighbor, that is not in a subdivision,
Correct,
and that's a big
That's-
piece.
And that's a dead-end road, right?
It is.
currently.
Right here? Yeah.
The one right next to you, okay.
But then one's further east or not, yeah.
And what are they doing? I drove down there and they're doing something at the end of that road. They're doing 5
So
acre, are they
there's a-
building on those
A
lots?
new lot that's going in right here. That's why this was shown jogged. That's a new lot that's been split off, so that one was platted. That's why it's not shown.
But the
and
one
I
in
think that-
between Lanny and that is not.
These two,
The one in the middle there? Oh, yeah,
those are both platted,
they are, okay.
yeah.
Well, I have some thoughts, and these are my thoughts. I feel that, after I drove around over there today, when I got back from DC, I thought, this is surrounded by 2 acre lots. There's nothing even close that's 1 acre. And honestly, I feel that in every incidence that I have been in a planning commission meeting where we were talking about 1 acre lots or less, we look at the surrounding properties and do they touch something? And if they do, they should be similar so that there is a buffer there. And I still believe that that is a good way to judge things. I do see everybody's point, and I do respect those. I wondered what was going on at the end of that street, and if those were going to be smaller lots, then that would, have some bearing. And I don't know what anybody's intent is east of you, Ralph, and obviously we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but the one, let me just finish. The one other thing that came to my mind is the subdivision to the west across the highway. They actually came in, all of the neighbors. They were all on board with giving each other the opportunity to use TDRs and split their property, and maybe they didn't even need TDR.
They just rezoned it to the
They
1 acre.
rezoned it to 1 acre, but they were all on board. And so that gave them the opportunity to do that. And we approved that. And, yes, I agree. I agree with Lynette, is it Lynette? That one more person is not going to make or break anything over there. In fact, it will probably add, because it seems like anytime someone moves in, you fall in love with them and you're so happy they're there, and anything in the past is forgotten. So I'm very torn, because I believe in property rights for everyone. And Ralph, I believe that yes, you, within the guidelines of the code, you have the right to do that, but then I also believe that there are property rights for everyone around you as well. And I do believe that yours would be a small island there of 1 acre or so lots. So this is hard.
Let me make a motion. I'll make a motion, and then we can discuss it if needs be. I move that we approve the application for subdivision with the included TDR overlay, and that's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
You're welcome to further discuss. Jesse?
I got mine.
Just roll call.
Okay. Do we have,
We have a motion and a second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any, all in favor, or any?
I'll just say one more thing before I give my vote, is that we're a recommending body. And,
Yeah.
given the way we recommended in the past, as I thought about it more, it just feels more appropriate. The elected officials have to make the tough call on this one, and they might choose not to do it, and then they're on the line whether or not they get reelected. That's not our position. So
Okay, so TJ, what's your vote?
we're doing a roll call.
I
Do roll
think,
call in favor.
do you want to say, okay, let's go, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Oh, so you're both in favor? You changed your mind?
Yeah.
Did you
I was
vote,
worried about
Sherry?
precedents and if there's any recourse, and knowing that this is a legislative matter, and I like TJ's point too, we're a recommending body, we'll let them make the big decision, so. I think we've vetted it for sure, and we've done some of the heavy lifting, and so now city council can make that choice.
Okay. Did you vote, Sherry?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
You gonna abstain?
What's that?
You gonna abstain?
I can abstain? Oh, that's not like me.
You can vote against it.
I think just to stand by I'm going to vote against it, even though I do agree with everybody who wants it, but obviously, the 4 votes will carry. But I do feel like the right thing is to not have a 1 acre lot in the middle of a whole bunch of 2 and 5 acre lots. I really do feel like that it's an island. But, yeah,
Under normal circumstances, I would
Yeah,
agree.
I agree.
Go with the TDR overlay program, and the applicant meeting every requirement, including that TDR overlay. The city adopted that TDR program 20-some-odd years ago,
and I agree.
everything
I agree with
is in
that.
line with that TDR program and with his application. This is perfect place for it. So.
And I agree with that. So
Okay.
there's a
Could
lot
you
of good on both
expand
sides.
a subdivision? Like if you said, hey, we want to expand our subdivision plat, like if a adjacent area said, we want to protect ourselves from something like this happening, is there ability to
Yeah,
go
you
back
can
and kind
amend,
of
you can amend a
replat?
plat to add lots, or if they just become their own separate plat, it's the same protections, but.
Yeah, okay. So there's a process if a group of people want to go through that.
And they can do, one of the things we've talked about with some of the neighbors, you can record covenants on your property that indicate that it will not be subdivided in the future, and that's an option for them too.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
that's all
Okay,
we
well,
have
I
tonight.
think that's it.
When do you think this will go to city council?
First meeting in June.
Okay.
3rd, I
Okay.
think it is.
Mark your calendars.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Oh, that's hard. That's hard.
Thanks, guys.